Here we are, part 4 of the Acura TL clutch install, and in this part we're going to install the transmission and the subframe, finish everything up and get the car running and driving. So we're back here in the garage with the TL, and we're finally getting to the point where we're on the uphill battle. Next step is to get the transmission on the jack, lift it up, try to get it into place, get it on the input shaft lined up, and see if we can line it up. I know this can be a hassle sometimes. We just did Matt's clutch and flywheel in his Civic, and it was a bit of a pain. So I'm just gonna pretty much get the jack under the transmission, lift it up, and see if I can get it to go. Well, we got the trans installed and all the bolts are torqued down. That actually worked really well considering it was only me who was installing it. So I jacked it up, I lined it up perfectly, and it just went in, which is amazing. Like, it never works like that. You always have issues with either the alignment dowels or getting the input shaft into the pressure plate properly. But it worked amazingly and I'm so stoked. Now the next part is going to be installing some mounts. As you can see, I've got this motor mount here. Sorry, the trans mount here. I've installed the motor mount down there. It has nothing to attach to because we need the subframe for that. So that pretty much means next step is installing the subframe. Well, the subframe is installed, and that, again, just like the transmission, went really smoothly. And I've already got the mounts pretty much all bolted down. So there's the front mount for the engine mount. There is the top mount, which I already did for the transmission, but then there's the bottom mount for the transmission. There's 4 bolts down there that I've connected. Then there is the rear motor mount bolt that I've also tightened down and torqued, and I've got all of the subframe bolts bolted down, torqued, aligned, because I had to like make alignment marks to make sure that the brackets were aligned properly. So that is all done, and now we're just gonna start cleaning up the top here. So just bolting everything back together, putting it all back, putting the starter in, airbox, battery, all of this fun stuff. And we're pretty much on our way to getting this thing running. We've also got to do the suspension. We got to put it back together. So I have been working on that, and as you can see, I have the lower ball joint out. So this is the one here that I ended up, the collar came out of the lower control arm. So what I had to do is smash it out, and so I ground down the actual part with the threading on it, and I just started smashing on it with a 3-pound hammer because that is all that could work. I have this ball joint press kit, but the I guess the little sleeve or the collar that comes with it didn't quite fit. It was just hitting on the ridge here, so it didn't fit in, and there's no way that I could use this. So yeah, I cut off the threading and I just smashed it with a hammer. It was a lot of work, but you know, it came out. But so now I pretty much have to put the ball joint in, and then I can start reassembling everything. I'm just going to go ahead and do that because, again, it's not very interesting. It's just one of those things that has to be done. But I just figured I'd send you guys an update, and we'll get going from there. Well, the ball joint is installed, and I use the old, I guess you would call it freezer technique, where you put the ball joint in the freezer for a while, and then you heat up this surface here. And that worked really well. It slid in pretty good. Everything is good and installed, so next step is going to be just put the drive shaft in and together. I also have to put the intermediate shaft in, and then tie rod, I've already got that switched over with a new one. And then I've got to put the ABS sensor back in, and just I guess mount the shock, and then we're looking pretty good. We're getting to the point where pretty much everything is wrapped up. Yeah. So we'll get to it, and we'll pick up later with a little bit of an update. There we go. The passenger side is all back together. We got the brakes, tie rod, lower strut, ABS sensor, ball joint, axle nut. All of that is connected and good to go, and the driver's side is already done. Now we're getting to the point where we just have to fill it with fluids and get the car started. So what I'm going to do next is fill up transmission fluid because I haven't got any in there yet. And then I have to bleed my power steering system because I had to disconnect it, as you know. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So transmission fluid is all filled up, and now we're going to fill up the power steering fluid. Okay, power steering fluid, transmission fluid are all filled up. Now, in order to bleed the power steering system, what I've got to do is fill the reservoir up, start the car, and with the wheels in the air, move the steering wheel lock to lock. And that will allow me to bleed all the air out of the system. If I just make sure that the reservoir is filled, then that takes care of that. So I'm going to take care of that now. And it's the first start, so we get to actually see if the car runs after I took everything apart. And I should be able to pop the clutch and see if the wheels turn and see if I hear any weird sounds. So let's do it. Well, as you can tell, there is quite a sound coming from the clutch area. It's a throwout bearing from what I can tell. And the car doesn't go into gear. So it seems like either the throwout bearing is wrong, or it's not making contact with the pressure plate in the right way, because that squealing sound is actually the throwout bearing when it's contacting the pressure plate, which I don't know why it's squealing so badly. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I tried looking as best I could through the little hole where the like clutch slave cylinder presses against the fork, I guess, that throw release bearing fork, whatever you want to call it. I took the little rubber cover off and looked in there, and everything looks okay. And I just can't tell why it's squealing, and I'm not getting enough play. I'm not getting enough movement on the pressure plate, so the friction disc isn't like disconnecting from the flywheel properly, and I can't get the car into gear. So I don't know what that is. So I've looked as best as I could, and everyone on the internet and all the logic inside of my brain says that your clutch isn't, the clutch system, the clutch pedal isn't pushing the release bearing enough. And that can be like your slave cylinder is bad, you have air in the system, or the clutch pedal has been adjusted and you're not getting enough play, like downward play on the clutch pedal to actually push that release bearing into the pressure plate far enough. There's so many different things it could be. The car was working fine beforehand, before I started this project, other than the clutch disc was worn out and starting to slip. So it might be something with the new parts. I didn't compare them against one another enough. So maybe there's a difference in the bearing. Maybe they sent me the wrong bearing. I mean, it happens. Maybe the flywheel is too thick and I'm not getting the pressure plate pulling the friction disc back enough. It could be so many things and I don't know what it is.
So it pretty much means I have to take the transmission out again and diagnose what it is, because there's nothing I can do at this point with everything in the car. So I'm gonna just go ahead and do that. I'm gonna try this other technique that I found where you don't actually drop the subframe. And the guy I saw doing this, I think he was working on a K20, or K24, but anyways, different motor. But I'm gonna see if it can work with just, instead of dropping the subframe, you just disconnect the transmission and pull it back far enough. That might be good enough. That might be all I need. If that doesn't work, then I will just end up dropping the entire subframe, because I've done it before. It'll be a lot quicker this time. One, because I've done it before, and two, because I'm not replacing all those components that I was replacing before, like the steering rack and the control arm, all that stuff. And three, because I've taken everything apart, so it'll be easy to come off. There's not gonna be any rusted bolts. Everything will just zip right off and it'll be quick. So I'm just gonna wrap up the video here. That's part 4, that's the end. Pretty much the moral of this series is don't do what I did. Bring it to a shop, get someone else to do it, or if you're doing it yourself, have someone more experienced. You're probably more experienced than I am. So yeah, just do it with someone with better experience and who knows what they're doing, because that wasn't me. And or you know what, do what I did, make a mistake, go in and fix it, and you know, learn for next time. So as much as this is a bummer, it's also a learning experience. I'm going to take it as that, because there's always going to be mistakes being made, especially when you're an inexperienced guy like me, working kind of doing it by himself and just trying to figure it out. So I'm happy with the experience so far, and if I can finally get the car running, which will take me a few more days of tearing things apart and maybe running to the parts store and getting the right parts. Once I can finally get that all figured out and the car is driving, I think I'm going to be happy, and it'll all be worth it in the end. And the amount of money that I would have saved instead of going to a shop is definitely going to be worth it. So yeah, that's going to be the end of this video series, and please subscribe to MT Garage on YouTube. Check out our other videos, because we've got a lot of cool stuff going on. Lots of Honda stuff. We've got you know, 2 race cars that we're building, which is pretty sweet. They're both EK hatches. We've got a Fast and Furious replica show car. Not a replica, it's more of like a homage sort of thing. We got that build going on with a 93 Civic. That thing is sick. I'll be doing some work on my Sylvia coming up, and you know, we got all sorts of other things going on, all sorts of fun projects that we do. So give us a subscribe, check out our videos, give this video a like, comment with kind of your experience with working on cars, and the bad experiences and the good, and just comment and let's talk, let's have a good time. So thanks for sticking around this long, and we'll see you guys later, and I hope you have better luck with your projects.